The night sky over ancient Greece had always been the same. Thorn knew every star by heart. His grandfather had taught him their names when he was just a boy, explaining how sailors used them to find their way home. But tonight, something was different. "Look," Thorn said, pointing up at the dark canvas above. "There's a new star." His friend Dex squinted upward. "I don't see anything." "There," Thorn insisted. "It's brighter than the others. And it wasn't there yesterday." The strange light hung in the sky like a drop of gold. Unlike the other stars, it didn't twinkle. It just watched, steady and unblinking. What Thorn didn't know was that he was looking at the command ship of the Draconian Empire. And it was not alone. Commander Krell stood on the bridge of the Fang of Glory, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. His amber eyes, with their vertical pupils, studied the blue-green planet that filled the main viewing screen. "This world is perfect," he said, his forked tongue flicking between words. "Abundant water, breathable air, and only primitive life forms." Lieutenant Mix, his second-in-command, nodded. "The Emperor will be pleased. Our scans show the dominant species has only reached the Bronze Age. They build with stone and simple metals." Krell's mouth stretched into what his species considered a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "They'll make excellent workers for the mines back home." The Draconian Empire had conquered 12 planets across 3 star systems. Each time, their method was the same. Identify worlds with useful resources, but limited technology, then overwhelm the natives with superior weapons. The primitive species of Earth would stand no chance against Draconian plasma rifles and battle mechs. "Prepare the scout ships," Krell ordered. "I want teams on the ground by sunrise. Choose landing sites away from their largest settlements. We'll study them first, then strike when we understand their weaknesses." "Yes, Commander," Mex replied, pressing a claw to his chest in salute. Krell turned back to the viewing screen. The Draconians had traveled for 20 years to reach this system. Their ships, massive city-sized vessels, had been home to 3 generations of soldiers. Now, finally, their journey would pay off. "This will be the easiest conquest yet," Krell said to himself. He had no idea how wrong he was. The next morning, Thorn woke early to check his fishing nets. The village of Akros sat on a rocky peninsula that jutted into the Aegean Sea. Most men here were fishermen, but Thorn was also known as a skilled hunter and tracker. As he walked along the coastal path, something caught his eye. A trail of smoke rose from the forest on the nearby hillside. It was too straight to be a natural fire. Curious, Thorn left his nets and headed toward the smoke. The forest was quiet, too quiet. No birds sang, no small animals rustled in the undergrowth. Thorn moved carefully, his hand on the bronze knife at his belt. When he reached a small clearing, he froze. A metal object, smooth and oval-shaped, sat in the center of the clearing. It was like nothing Thorn had ever seen. Larger than 3 houses put together, it gleamed in the morning sun. A section of its side had opened, revealing a dark entrance. Thorn crouched behind a fallen tree, watching. 3 figures emerged from the metal object. They walked on 2 legs like men, but they were not men. Their skin was covered in scales that shifted between green and brown. Their heads were longer, with no hair, and their eyes glowed like amber in the shadows. They wore strange clothes that seemed to shine, and they carried sticks that glowed at one end. They spoke to each other in harsh, clicking sounds that no human throat could make. Thorn's heart pounded. He had heard old stories about monsters and gods, but he had never believed them, until now. One of the creatures pointed a small object at the ground, and it projected an image of the surrounding area. Thorn could see his village represented in the floating picture, along with other settlements along the coast. He needed to warn his people. Slowly, Thorn began to back away, but his foot snapped a dry branch, and the sound echoed through the quiet forest. All 3 creatures turned toward him at once. One raised its glowing stick. Thorn ran. A blast of light shot past him, hitting a tree that instantly caught fire. Thorn didn't look back. He sprinted through the forest, jumping over fallen logs and ducking under branches. Behind him, he could hear the creatures in pursuit, crashing through the undergrowth. Thorn knew these woods better than anyone. He led his pursuers toward a steep ravine, then veered sharply at the last moment. One of the creatures failed to turn in time and tumbled over the edge with a shrieking cry. The remaining two stopped, calling to their fallen companion. This gave Thorn the chance to disappear deeper into the forest. Back at the scout ship, Officer Draz reported to the ship's captain. "It saw us, Captain Vorks, a local primitive. It escaped into the forest." Captain Vorks hissed in annoyance. "And Trooper Lek fell into a crevasse. His life signs are weak." Vorks touched the communication device on his wrist. "Command ship, this is Scout Team 3. We have been seen by a native, and we have one injured." Commander Krell's voice came through clearly. Was the primitive armed? "Only with a simple metal blade," Vorks replied. "Then there is no concern," Krell said dismissively. "Continue your survey. If you encounter more natives, capture one for study." "Yes, Commander." Vorks closed the communication and turned to his remaining team member. "Draz, prepare the scanner. We'll find the primitive that escaped." Thorn burst into the village, gasping for breath. "Monsters," he shouted. "Monsters in the forest." At first, no one believed him, but Thorn was known for his honesty, and the fear in his eyes was real. The village elder, Pyros, listened to Thorn's story with a grave face. "And you say they came from the sky? From the new star?" "They came in a metal egg," Thorn said. "And they can throw fire from sticks." Pyros looked up at the sky, where the strange new star could still be seen, even in daylight. "The gods are sending us a test," he said finally. But Thorn shook his head. "Not gods. They bleed. I saw one fall." The elder's eyes narrowed. "If they bleed, they can die. Gather the warriors. We must prepare." By nightfall, more reports came from other villages. Strange lights in the sky, metal eggs landing in remote places, scaled creatures walking on two legs. The invasion of Earth had begun. But it wouldn't go as the Draconians planned. Because if there was one thing humans had always been good at, it was surviving against the odds. 3 days after Thorn's encounter with the scaled invaders, the men of Akros set a trap. They had seen how these creatures moved through the forest, confident and careless. The strangers had powerful weapons, but they did not know the land. Thorn led a group of 20 warriors, hiding in the trees near where he had first spotted the alien ship. They waited in silence as the morning mist rose from the ground. "They will come," Thorn whispered to Dex, who crouched beside him. They searched the same area each day. Dex gripped his spear tighter. "I still think we should just hide. These are not men we can fight. We don't need to defeat them," Thorn replied. "We just need one to understand what we face." Sure enough, as the sun climbed higher, 3 Draconians appeared at the edge of the clearing. They carried their glowing sticks and moved with arrogant ease. Thorn raised his hand, the signal for everyone to stay still. The warriors of Akros had covered themselves with mud and leaves. They'd blended perfectly with the forest. The Draconians approached the center of the clearing. One of them, with darker scales and a marking on its chest, seemed to be the leader. It was Captain Vorks, though Thorn didn't know his name. Vorks stopped and sniffed the air. "Something is wrong," he hissed to the others in their clicking language. But his warning came too late. Thorn dropped his hand, and 20 bronze-tipped spears flew through the air. 2 Draconians fell instantly, multiple spears piercing their bodies. But Vorks was faster. He dodged and fired his weapon, turning a nearby tree to ash. The humans rushed forward with a battle cry. Vorks shot 3 men before his weapon made a strange sound and stopped working. He pulled out a smaller device, but a net thrown by Dex entangled him. Vorks fought like a cornered animal, his claws slashing through the net and cutting deep into the arm of a warrior who got too close. But there were too many humans. They overwhelmed him, pinning him to the ground. "Don't kill it," Thorn shouted. "We need it alive." On the command ship orbiting Earth, Commander Krell received the emergency signal from Captain Vorks's suit. It showed his life signs were still active, but he was not moving. "Scout Team 3 is down," Lieutenant Mix reported. "Shall we send retrieval forces?" Krell's eyes narrowed. How could primitives with bronze weapons capture our troops? "Unknown, Commander. But the emergency beacon is still transmitting. Captain Vorks is alive." Krell paced the bridge, his tail swishing in agitation. This was not how things were supposed to go. The initial reports had confirmed the humans were technological infants. They had no electricity, no engines, not even simple firearms. They should have run in terror from Draconian weapons. "Send 2 battle mechs to retrieve our people," Krell ordered. "Show these primitives what happens when they resist the Empire." In the village of Akros, the captured Draconian was tied to a stone pillar in the center of the town square. The creature's amber eyes darted around, studying the humans who gathered to stare at it. Vorks was careful to keep his expression neutral, but inside, he was surprised. These humans showed no fear. They were curious, examining his scales and clothes with interest rather than terror. The village elder, Pyros, approached. "Can you understand us?" he asked, speaking slowly. Vorks said nothing. His translation device had been taken along with his weapons, but even if he had it, he would not speak to these primitives as equals. Thorn stepped forward. "It understands. Look at its eyes. It's thinking." Pyros nodded. "Bring food and water. If it's like us in any way, it needs to eat." A woman brought a wooden bowl of water and a plate of bread and fish. She placed them near Vorks, just within reach of his bound hands. Vorks ignored the offerings. He had been trained to resist interrogation. Besides, Draconian biology was different. He could go days without water if needed. "Why do they come to our world?" Pyros asked, though he knew the creature wouldn't answer. "What do they want?" "To take," Thorn said simply. "I saw how they looked at our land, our village, like a hungry man looks at another's meal." As night fell, most villagers returned to their homes, but Thorn stayed, watching their prisoner. Vorks had finally taken some water when he thought no one was looking. "I know you understand more than you show," Thorn said quietly. "Your eyes follow our movements. You listen to our words." Vorks remained silent, but his tail twitched slightly. "We are not as simple as you think," Thorn continued. "We may not have your weapons or flying ships, but we know this land. We've survived floods and earthquakes, wars and plagues. We will survive you too." For the first time, Vorks looked directly at Thorn. There was something in the human's voice that made the Draconian think this wasn't just empty bravado. The next morning, the ground shook as 2 massive metal shapes crashed through the forest toward Ekros. Battle mechs, 3 times the height of a man, with weapons mounted on their arms and shoulders. The villagers ran in panic as trees snapped like twigs under the mech's heavy steps. In the chaos, Vorks saw his chance. He strained against his ropes, trying to break free. But the humans had tied him well, the knots tightening as he struggled. Thorn ran to the village square, a bronze sword in his hand. It looked pitiful compared to the approaching war machines. "Cut me loose," Vorks said suddenly, speaking the human language for the first time. His pronunciation was strange, but understandable. "Those machines will destroy everything." Thorn's eyes widened in surprise, but he didn't move to free the Draconian. "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't," Vorks replied honestly. "But those battle mechs will kill everyone, including me. They are programmed to retrieve me and eliminate all witnesses." Thorn hesitated, then made a decision. He cut Vorks's ropes but kept his sword at the alien's throat. "One wrong move, and you die first." Vorks rubbed his wrists. "Smart human. Now listen carefully if you want your people to live." The battle mechs reached the edge of the village, their sensors scanning for Draconian life signs. They found Vorks immediately and started walking toward him, crushing houses in their path. They follow my biorhythm, Vorks explained quickly. I can lead them away from your village. Why would you help us? Thorn demanded. Vorks's scaled face was unreadable. I'm not. I'm helping myself. These mechs will bring me back to my kind. It wasn't the whole truth, but Thorn had no choice but to believe him. Go then. Vorks ran toward the forest, away from the village. The battle mechs followed, changing direction to pursue him. Thorn watched them go, a strange feeling in his gut. Something told him this would not be the last time he saw the scaled warrior. What Vorks didn't tell Thorn was that he had felt strangely ill since his capture. His scales itched, and his breathing felt labored. Something on this planet was affecting his body, something the Draconian science team hadn't detected from orbit. And he wasn't the only one. All across Earth, Draconian scouts were beginning to feel the same symptoms. The invasion had only just begun, but already, Earth was fighting back in ways the Draconians never expected. 6 months had passed since the strange new stars appeared in the sky. 6 months since the scaled invaders had come to Earth. What had begun as isolated incidents in remote areas had grown into a war that raged across multiple lands. Thorn stood on a hillside overlooking a valley where 3 Draconian ships had landed. His appearance had changed. A scar ran down his left cheek, and his eyes had a hardness that hadn't been there before. He carried not just his bronze sword, but also a small Draconian weapon taken from a fallen enemy. They look sick, said Dex, who crouched beside him. See how they move. Slower than before. Thorn nodded. It's the same everywhere. The lizard men are weakening. Reports had come from distant lands, Egypt, Babylon, even far-off China, all telling the same story. The invaders were powerful, but struggling. Something about Earth was making them ill. What neither Thorn nor any human knew was that Earth's gravity was stronger than the Draconian homeworld. The constant extra weight was straining their bodies. Worse, Earth's bacteria and viruses, harmless to humans, were attacking the Draconians' immune systems. On the command ship, Commander Krell coughed violently into a cloth. When he pulled it away, it was stained with the dark blue of Draconian blood. How many more have fallen ill? He demanded. Lieutenant Mix consulted a data screen. 40% of ground forces report symptoms, Commander. 10% are too sick to fight. Krell slammed his fist on the table. This is impossible. Our medical scans showed no dangerous pathogens on this planet. The scans were done from orbit, Mex reminded him gently. Some microorganisms were too small to detect. And the gravity reports. Our scientists miscalculated. Earth's gravity is 12% stronger than our homeworld. The constant strain is affecting our troops' health. Krell turned to the viewing screen, which showed the blue-green planet below. What should have been an easy conquest had turned into a nightmare. The humans, those primitive creatures with their stone buildings and bronze weapons, were adapting. They were learning to use captured Draconian technology. They were fighting back. We need reinforcements, Krell decided. Send a message to the Empire. Tell them we require medical supplies and gravity compensators. Mix hesitated. Sir, the nearest Imperial fleet is 3 years away. Krell's eyes narrowed. Then we must change our strategy. Prepare the orbital weapons. If we cannot take this planet, we will make an example of it. Captain Vorks had been recaptured during a failed raid 2 months earlier. This time, he was held not in a village, but in a cave deep in the mountains. His health had deteriorated badly. His once bright scales were now dull, and he wheezed when he breathed. Thorn entered the cave carrying a torch and a bowl of food. The relationship between the human and the Draconian had evolved into something complex. Not friendship, exactly, but a wary respect. Your people attacked another village today, Thorn said as he set down the food. Vorks looked up wearily. How many ships? 2. But we were ready. We've learned your weapons. Thorn held up the Draconian blaster he carried. This one still works. Vorks coughed, a rattling sound deep in his chest. You shouldn't be able to use those. They're coded to Draconian DNA. We found a way around that, Thorn said simply. He didn't explain that they had discovered the weapons could be activated using the severed claws of dead Draconians. It was a grim solution, but war made people do terrible things. Vork studied Thorn with his amber eyes. You humans adapt quickly. Too quickly. We have to, Thorn replied. It's how we survive. There was a moment of silence between them. Your commander, Thorn said finally. What will he do when he realizes he's losing? Vork's tail twitched, a sign of agitation. Commander Krell doesn't accept defeat. If ground forces fail, he'll use the ships to attack from the sky. Thorn had seen the devastating power of Draconian weapons. Yes, the command ship has weapons that can burn entire cities. Thorn's face hardened. Then we must stop him before he can use them. Vork's laughed, a harsh sound that turned into another coughing fit. How? You can't reach the ships in orbit. No, Thorn agreed, but you can help us reach the ones on the ground. The next day, messengers ran between villages, carrying Thorn's plan. It was ambitious, perhaps impossible, but they had no choice. Across the land, humans began to gather, bringing whatever weapons they had, bronze swords, captured Draconian blasters, even simple farming tools. Vorks, still weak but able to walk, stood beside Thorn as they looked down at the assembled force. Nearly 1,000 humans had answered the call. Your people will die, Vorks said quietly. Some will, Thorn acknowledged, but not all. And if we do nothing, everyone dies. Vorks was silent for a long moment. Then he said, the command ship sends signals to the ground ships daily. If those signals are interrupted, the ships will think they're under attack. Thorn turned to him in surprise. You would help us? Vorks looked away. I've seen enough death. And this planet, it's killing us anyway. We were not made for this world. The truth was more complicated. Vorks had come to believe the invasion was wrong. The humans, for all their technological limitations, had shown courage and intelligence. They didn't deserve extinction. And there was something else, a growing suspicion that the Empire had known about Earth's dangers and sent Krell's fleet anyway, as an experiment. If you help us, Thorn said carefully, what do you want in return? A way home, Vorks replied simply. Not to fight again, just to leave. Thorn nodded slowly. If there is a way, we will find it. That night, under cover of darkness, the human army moved toward the valley. They split into 3 groups, each targeting one of the Draconian ships. Thorn led the largest group, with Vorks at his side. The Draconian had drawn maps of the ship's interiors and explained their weaknesses, knowledge that would have been unthinkable months ago. Remember, Thorn told his warriors, we must take the communication room intact. Everything depends on it. As they neared the edge of the valley, a bright light suddenly illuminated the sky. Looking up, they saw one of the stars, one of the Draconian ships in orbit, glowing brighter than before. They're powering weapons, Vorks said, his voice urgent. We don't have much time. Thorn gave the signal. Across the valley, hundreds of humans charged toward the landed ships. The Draconian guards, weakened by Earth's environment and unprepared for such a massive attack, fell back in confusion. The battle for Earth's future had begun, and unknown to both sides, it would change the destiny of 2 species forever. Chaos erupted as humans stormed the 3 grounded Draconian ships. The night air filled with flashes of light as Draconian weapons fired, cutting down the first wave of attackers. But the humans kept coming, using shields made from scavenged Draconian armor to protect themselves. Thorn led his group toward the largest ship, running low to the ground. Beside him, Vorks moved with difficulty. His breathing labored. The Draconians' knowledge was their only advantage. There, Vorks pointed to a section of the ship near the ground. That panel opens to a maintenance tunnel. The guards won't expect an attack there. Thorn signaled to 10 of his strongest warriors. They broke from the main group and followed Vorks toward the hidden entrance. The rest of the humans continued their frontal assault, drawing the Draconians' attention. When they reached the panel, Vorks pressed his palm against it. Nothing happened. "They've removed my access," he hissed. "We'll have to force it open." Two humans wedged bronze blades into the seam of the panel and pried with all their strength. The metal groaned but didn't give. "Use this." Thorn handed Vorks a captured Draconian weapon. "Can you make it work?" Vorks took the weapon, adjusted a setting, and fired at the edge of the panel. The metal glowed red, then began to melt. Working quickly, he cut around the panel until it fell away, revealing a dark tunnel. "I go first," Vorks said. "There may be security measures." Thorn nodded, and the Draconian crawled into the tunnel. The humans followed one by one. On the command ship, alarms blared as sensors detected the attack on the ground vessels. "Ground ships report multiple breaches," Lieutenant Mix announced. "Humans have entered all 3 vessels." Commander Krell's tail lashed in fury. "How?" "They're primitives." "Unknown, sir, but they appear to be using our own weapons against us." Krell coughed violently, spitting blue blood onto the floor. The illness that had started among the ground troops had spread to the orbital ships. Even with their advanced medical technology, the Draconians couldn't find a cure for the Earth pathogens attacking their bodies. "Status of the orbital weapons," Krell demanded. "Charging, sir. Ready to fire in 10 minutes." Krell smiled grimly. "Target the largest human settlements first. Let's see how brave they are when their cities burn." Inside the Draconian ship, Thorn and his group moved through narrow corridors, following Vorks. They encountered 2 guards, but the element of surprise allowed them to overpower them quickly. "The communication center is ahead," Vorks whispered. "It will be heavily guarded." Thorn looked at his warriors. Their faces were set with determination. They knew what was at stake. "How many guards?" he asked. 4, usually, but they may have added more because of the attack. Thorn thought for a moment. "We need a distraction." One of the warriors, a man named Galen, stepped forward. "I'll draw them out. When they chase me, the rest of you can enter." Before anyone could argue, Galen took a Draconian weapon and ran down the corridor, firing it at the ceiling. Alarms blared louder, and they heard shouts as the guards responded. "Now," Thorn ordered, and they rushed toward the communication center. 3 Draconian guards had left their posts to chase Galen, but one remained, firing his weapon as the humans burst in. Thorn dove to the side, feeling the heat of the blast pass by his face. Another warrior wasn't so lucky, falling with a smoking hole in his chest. Vorks moved with surprising speed for his weakened state. He tackled the guard, and they rolled across the floor, claws slashing and teeth snapping. Thorn jumped forward, driving his bronze sword into the guard's side. The Draconian went still. "Quick!" Vorks gasped, pulling himself to the control panels. "We don't have much time." He worked the controls with practiced ease, his claws dancing over symbols that meant nothing to the humans. "What are you doing?" Thorn asked. "Sending a false message to the command ship," Vorks explained, "telling them the ground ships are secure and the attack has been repelled." "Will they believe it?" "Briefly, long enough for me to access their systems." Vorks' eyes narrowed in concentration. "There's something else. The command ship is charging weapons." Thorn's blood ran cold. "The sky weapons you spoke of?" "Yes, they plan to burn your cities from orbit." "Can you stop them?" Vorks hesitated. "Not directly, but I can try to corrupt their targeting systems." He worked faster, entering commands. Sweat beaded on his scaled skin, a sign of how ill he truly was. "Done," he finally said. "I've sent a virus into their targeting computers. It will make precise attacks impossible. They'll still fire, but the blasts will be scattered, less destructive." Thorn clasped Vorks' shoulder. "You've saved many lives today." The Draconian looked away. "I've betrayed my people." "You've chosen to be better than your orders," Thorn corrected. Outside, the battle continued to rage. The humans had managed to enter all 3 ships, but they were taking heavy losses. Yet for each human that fell, they took down a Draconian. The invaders, weakened by Earth's environment and sickness, were finding the primitive humans far deadlier than they had expected. On the other side of the world, in what would one day be called China, similar battles were taking place, and in the lands of Egypt, and across the plains of Central Asia. Humans everywhere were rising up against the invaders. Commander Krell stood on the bridge of the command ship, watching as the first orbital weapon prepared to fire. "Target locked on largest human settlement," Mex reported. "Fire," Krell ordered. A beam of energy shot from the command ship toward Earth, but instead of striking the human city, it hit miles away, vaporizing an empty stretch of forest. "What happened?" Krell roared. "Targeting system malfunction," Mick said, checking the displays. Attempting to compensate, they fired again. This time, the beam hit a mountain range, causing a massive explosion, but killing no humans. "Something is wrong with our systems," Mick said. "We're detecting a data corruption spreading through the ship's computers." Krell slammed his fist into a control panel. "It's the ground ships. Someone has accessed our network." Before he could give another order, a new alarm sounded. This one was different, more urgent. "Medical emergency," announced the ship's computer. "Biological contamination detected in life support systems." Krell felt a chill run down his spine. The illness that had been spreading among his troops had reached the environmental systems of the command ship itself. "Seal off all sections," he ordered. "Full quarantine protocols." But it was already too late. The Earth pathogens had spread throughout the ship, and in the other orbital vessels as well. The siege had turned. Now it was the Draconians who were trapped, surrounded not by armies, but by invisible enemies their technology couldn't defeat. 1 year after the first Draconian ships appeared in Earth's sky, the invasion had failed completely. Of the 20 scout ships that had landed on the planet's surface, 16 had been captured or destroyed by humans. The remaining 4 had been abandoned, their crews too sick to operate them. In orbit, the situation was even worse. The Earth pathogens that had infected the ground troops had spread through the fleet. Over half the Draconian crew members were ill, many too weak to perform their duties. The command ship's medical bay was overflowing with the sick and dying. Commander Krell, once proud and confident, now sat slumped in his command chair. His scales had lost their luster, and blue blood stained the cloth he held to his mouth. "Status report," he rasped. Lieutenant Mix, himself showing signs of the illness, checked the data screens. "Life support systems are failing on ships 7 and 12. We've lost contact with 4 more ground vessels. And the humans. They've taken control of our ground bases. They're studying our technology." Krell closed his eyes briefly. The great Draconian Empire, conquerors of 12 worlds, defeated by primitives with bronze weapons and a planet full of microscopic killers. "We have one option left," Krell said, his voice hollow. "Prepare the last assault." On Earth, Thorn stood atop a hill, watching the night sky. The Draconian ships were still visible, but they had grown dimmer in recent weeks. Something was happening up there. Vork stood beside him. The Draconian had survived the illness that killed many of his kind, though he remained weak. He had fully sided with the humans now, teaching them how to use the technology they had captured. "They're dying," Vork said, looking up at the ships. "My people." Thorn nodded grimly. "Can they return home?" Vork shook his head. The Empire would never allow potentially contaminated ships to return. They would be shot down before they reached Draconian space. "So they're trapped." "Yes, as am I." Thorn turned to look at his unlikely ally. "You're not a prisoner anymore." "No," Vorks agreed, "but I can never go home." Their conversation was interrupted by a shout. Dex ran up the hill, pointing at the sky. "Look!" One of the Draconian ships was moving, descending toward Earth's atmosphere. Its hull glowed red as it entered, leaving a fiery trail across the sky. "What's happening?" Thorn asked. Vorks's eyes widened. "A suicide run. They're going to crash the ship into a populated area. Where? Vorks calculated quickly, based on the trajectory, the great city to the south. He meant what humans called Athens, one of the largest settlements in that part of the world. We must warn them, Thorn said, already turning to go. There's no time, Vorks replied. But the ship is damaged. Its guidance systems might be affected by the virus I uploaded. It may miss its target. They watched in horror as the ship blazed through the sky like a falling star. But instead of hitting the distant city, it crashed into the sea miles from shore. A massive plume of steam rose where it hit, and waves crashed against the coast. One ship, Vorks said quietly. But there are others. Commander Krell watched as the first kamikaze ship failed to hit its target. His plan was desperate: crash the remaining ships into human population centers, taking as many of the primitives with them as possible. Prepare the next ship, he ordered. But before Mix could respond, alarms blared throughout the command ship. Life support critical, announced the ship's computer. Atmospheric contamination at lethal levels. Mix checked the readings with trembling hands. It's spreading too fast, Commander. The filters can't keep up. Krell coughed violently, his lungs burning. He knew then that they had lost completely. There would be no glorious last strike, no revenge against the humans. Just slow death in orbit around an alien world. Send the message, he said finally. Sir, to all ships, initiate stasis protocol. It was their final option. The Draconian ships were equipped with stasis chambers designed for long journey travel. They couldn't cure the illness, but they could suspend the crew in stasis, preserving them until what? Rescue was unlikely. The Empire would declare them lost and move on. But it was better than certain death. What about the ground troops? Mix asked. Krell's face hardened. Those who sided with humans have made their choice. The rest must find their way to stasis pods in the remaining ships or face their fate. As the message went out to the fleet, Krell dragged himself to his personal chamber. The stasis pod opened at his command, a coffin-like structure with soft blue light glowing inside. Computer, log final entry, he rasped as he climbed into the pod. The invasion of Planet 3 to 75C has failed. Indigenous microorganisms and higher-than-expected gravity rendered the planet uninhabitable for Draconian biology. Native species showed unexpected resistance and adaptability. Recommend quarantine of this sector. Commander Krell, signing off. The stasis pod sealed around him, and his consciousness faded. His last thought was that he had failed the Empire. He didn't realize that his failure had saved humanity from enslavement. Across the Draconian fleet, stasis pods activated. One by one, the ships went dark, their systems powering down to minimal levels. Only life support for the stasis chambers remained active, powered by the ship's nuclear cores, enough energy to last thousands of years. The invasion was over, but the ships remained silent sentinels in Earth's orbit. Centuries passed. The humans who had fought the Draconians passed into legend, then myth, then were forgotten entirely. The ships in the sky became new constellations in human astronomy, their true nature unknown. But the Draconian technology left on Earth changed human history. Bronze gave way to iron faster than it might have otherwise. Simple machines appeared sooner. Knowledge advanced in ways that would have been impossible without the alien influence. And in a cave in the mountains, Thorn's descendants kept watch over a dying Draconian who had chosen humans over his own kind. Before he died, Vorks had recorded all he knew of Draconian science, leaving a legacy that would eventually help humans reach for the stars themselves. In the year 1969 when humans finally returned to space, their first close study of the strange artificial satellites revealed their true nature: massive ships, still in perfect condition, their alien crews preserved in stasis. Some argued for destroying them, others for attempting to wake the sleeping aliens. In the end, humanity chose to leave them as they were, a reminder of their first contact with the stars and their first victory against a threat from beyond. The Draconian ships that had come to conquer Earth stayed in orbit forever, monuments to the resilience of a species that refused to be conquered, even when armed with nothing but bronze and courage. And deep in space, the Draconian Empire continued to expand, never knowing that one small blue planet had changed their destiny forever by teaching them a crucial lesson. Sometimes, the simplest worlds hide the deadliest dangers.